And let me introduce the next speaker of our conference, our new partner from Keio University, Japan, Kumanoya-Nakagawa Yoko-san. The topic of her report is studying Ukrainian culture through the reading of Nikolai Gogol's Evening on a Farm near Dikanka, Achievements and Problems in a Japanese University Course. Please.
Thank you. Добрый день. Мене звати Йоко Kumanoya. Я професорка університету Keio в Японії. На початку своєї доповіді я хочу висловити щиру подяку та глибоку повагу до організаторів конференції та всіх присутніх у залі в Полтаві. Через надзвичайні трудності, пов'язані з теперішньою війною, я відчуваю розчарування, бо не можу нічого з цим зробити. Я просто витримую вас, бажаю якнайшвидшого відновлення миру і спокійного життя на землі України. А сьогодні я хочу розповісти вам про те, як ми з японськими студентами читали вечори на хуторі біля Диканьки Миколи Гоголя, вивчаючи історію та культуру України. Хотіла б зробити свою презентацію українською, але, на жаль, я поки не вмію цього зробити. Тож, дозвольте, будь ласка, далі говорити англійською. In Japan, academic year begins in April, as Dr. Adachi said, and students choose our courses at the beginning of the semester. Last year, in April, I noticed a dynamic increase of the number of students choosing course on area studies of Ukraine and other countries of former Soviet Union. Young Japanese students in particular seem to have developed a growing interest in Ukraine, not only its diplomacy and politics, but also in society, people, and culture. In 2022, I have been assigned to teach a new seminar for first and second year students. Sorry. I've already decided on the theme for this seminar, which was centered around Mykola Gogol's Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka. The reason for this choice is my personal interest in exploring Gogol's novels and deepening my understanding of Ukraine. I am intrigued in Ukrainian folklore, even though I don't speak the language. Therefore, I thought that starting with Gogol's works would be a good way to gain insight into the Ukrainian cultural identity that he portrays. My objective aligned with the students' interest, and as a result, my seminar titled Studying Ukrainian Culture Through the Reading Mykola Gogol's Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka attracted enthusiastic students. While few students were already familiar with the author, everyone approached the reading and studying of his works with pleasure. The course was scheduled to meet every Monday for 90 minutes, a total of 14 times from April to July in the spring semester, and 14 times from October to January in the autumn semester. During the spring semester, we focused on reading part 1 of Dikanka, while in the autumn semester, we were able to delve into 2 stories from part 2. This was due to the fact we spent a considerable amount of time reading and discussing Christmas Eve and A Terrible Vengeance. Now about the reading. In Japan, there are 2 translations of Mykola Gogol's Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka. We selected the newer version, which was published in 1977. Part 1 of translation was done by Yoshikazu Nakamura, a renowned scholar of the literature of the Rush era. Nakamura approached the translation with great care, paying close attention to detail and providing notes on matters unknown in Japan. He also included guidance on how to read certain words in original text. Part 2 was translated by Gogolian Taro Aoyama. To start this reading course, initially, I provided a shared workspace on the internet and named it as Special Seminar on Humanities, Reading Mikura Gogol's Evening on a Farm near Dikanka. I invited all the students of the course to join the folder as editors, allowing them to upload, download, and edit its contents. As you can see, there are several folders in the workspace that contain document files. Folder 1 contains notes on each novel from Part 1 of Dikanka, while the second folder is dedicated to notes on Part 2. These notes are standard document files that students can edit using Word Online. For instance, when we read the novel Sorochinsu Fair, each of us writes our findings, commentaries, and questions in the notes on Sorochinsu Fair documents. By the end of the reading, we have dozens of pages of notes on the story. The folder 3 contains PDF files and pictures and document files that we've collected during our research. These files include pages from books, scanned documents, and more. In addition to these folders, you can also see an Excel file. This is the list of references. Here we see the sheet 3, Literature on Culture of Ukraine and Russia. Students add titles of books and other materials to the sheet along with their commentaries and their names. The amount of information provided by a student naturally will affect their performance. The workspace is now ready, and the participants of the course have had access to it and were able to work in the documents at home before the class. During class, I share on a display screen the documents in the internet browser, and every student who has left a commentary on the notes discuss what they have found and shared in the document. Since this was a seminar, I encourage the students to engage in discussion with each other. This is a sample page from the notes, translated into English. It is the first page of the notes on St. John's Eve. My task is to write questions here about the word's meaning and the content of the story. So, the students who have read the story and my questions begin to answer them. These are the response to my question. Let's take a look. To my question, what is St. John's Eve? One student replied, Midsummer Festival. But the student didn't write their name. I think they hesitated to write the name because they just copied the translator's notes. The second student, Shogo, quoted an internet site about the festival. The third student left a comment about Japanese customs involving fire. While this comment has no connection to the story itself, this is also acceptable in this class because it helps students to relate to their own culture. Now let's take a closer look at the responses and comments that have been given in the notes on Sorochinsu Fair. I asked a simple question. Where is Sorochinsu located? The first response was, of course, a copy of the Google map. Okay, this is some basic information. However, the second comment by this student surprised me with the detailed description that included the history of the village. It turns out that the student had copied and pasted the name of the city into a search engine and landed on an informative page. Although the student couldn't read the page, they copied the sentences from the description and used an online machine translation tool such as Google Translate or DeepL to translate it into Japanese. While this approach is acceptable in our class too, we have set a rule that requires students to provide the URL of the web page to check the accuracy of their research. It's important to check the result of internet research and machine translation, but these tools can certainly widen the accessibility of students in their research. Another classmate shared with us a report about the Srochinchi Fair in modern times with many photographs. We also discovered a lovely website about Ukraine in Japanese, thanks to student Yumi. In this way, students added information and commentaries in their notes on every story and we discussed them. Now I'll talk about our achievements in the course, what we learned from Dikanka. I will also provide some resources used by the students to gather information. Sorry. At first, the topological information in Dikanka. The novels in Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka feature real place names for cities, villages, regions, rivers, and mountains. We researched the locations of the cities in Poltava Oblast, such as Dikanka, Milhorod, Srochinchi, and Hajach, as well as northern cities like Baturin, Konotop, Pulhil, cities in Cherkasy Oblast, Cherkasy, Kaniv, and southern city Zaporozhye. The story A Terrible Vengeance takes place in near Keio and features place names from western Ukraine such as Shumsk, Haluchina, Halich, Lviv, and the Carpathian Mountains. In this story, there are also some foreign place names such as Brest, Wallachia, Transylvania, Poland, Hungary, and Mount Krivan. In the story Christmas Eve, the hero Wakula flew to St. Petersburg. Names of food and drinks mentioned in the novels caught our attention. They sound so delicious. Varenitiki, Harushechiki, Tovchenotiki, Pampushechiki, Bubliki, Pryaniki, Krendeli, Buhanzi, Makivniki, and Korobai. We all agreed that we would like to try kovbasa and salo. However, it was difficult to imagine kucha, lemishka s molokom, and how to salt apples. There were also drinks mentioned like kvass, horilka, sibuha, and varenuha. We also tried to learn as much as possible about the people, professions, housing and tours, clothing, dances and songs mentioned in the novels, but we don't have time to discuss them all there on here. While reading the book, we found some mistakes in Japanese translation of Part 2. Taro Aoyama was a renowned researcher of Mikula Gogol, but he may not every detail in Dikanka. In the novel A Terrible Vengeance, there is a sentence that reads, "The musicians put their cymbal, kokyu, and tambourine beside themselves." This sentence sounds strange to us, as kokyu is known as Chinese stringed instrument. Therefore, we looked up the name of the instruments in the original text and searched for the instrument that Gogol had in mind. It turned out that the musicians were playing a dulcimer, playing dulcimer, a folk violin, and a tambourine. One of the students found a Ukrainian picture in which musicians were playing a dulcimer and a violin. Now we are in the next phase. Let's go beyond Wikipedia. Several students went beyond simply searching for the meanings of words or finding photographs. They attempted to read scientific articles or authorized encyclopedias to further their understanding. For example, when I asked a question about the terrible vengeance, one student looked into the story's background to answer it. My question was, when and where did hero Danilo fight as a young man? Danilo is a middle-aged Cossack who often remembers the words of his youth. A student named Shuto paid close attention to the sentences mentioning battles that Danilo may have participated in. In chapter 2, it is mentioned that the Cossacks don't speak about how the old of Tatar fought for 2 days at the Salt Lake. In the chapter 9, Danilo says, he was still alive, the honor and glory of our army, old Konashevich. And how much gold we got then. Considering all these together, Shuto concluded that the battle in which Danilo participated under the leadership of Petro Konashevich Sahaydachny was the campaign to Valna in 1606. He also provided information about Mikhail Khrushchevsky's book, Ukraine Rus, which is available to read online. Here is another example of reference from Shuto. My question about the story Christmas Eve was, what is the relationship between the blacksmith Valkula and the devil? The student searched for information about blacksmiths in Ukrainian culture and found a description in an article by Olga and Katerina Nikolenko titled Traditions of Ukrainian Folklore and Folk Mythology in the story Mykola Gogol's Christmas Eve. Shuto quoted from the article and provided information about the special magic powers attributed to blacksmiths. As he read further and came across the proverb, the devil is not as terrible as he is painted, he understood why the blacksmith and painter Vakula was able to control the devil. Shuto was a second-year student who studied Russian twice a week. Although his proficiency in the language was elementary, he was able to use words from Gogol's text as search terms. This may be a good example of the case that basic knowledge of foreign language becomes advantage in research in the contemporary world. So far, we talked about the achievements of our course, but we also found some problems during the course. First of all, there is not much information available in Japanese regarding Ukraine, particularly with regards to its cultural aspects. This is a limitation for students who are not proficient in English or other foreign languages. As for Gogol's works, Evening on a Farm near Dikanka is not well known in Japan, and there has been no recent translation in the last 50 years. As we have seen, in order to fully appreciate the novels from Dikanka, it would be beneficial to have a deeper understanding of the context. For the average Japanese reader, a new translation that concludes detailed commentary, illustrations, and maps would be necessary. But the most difficult remaining issues, in my opinion, is the challenge of analyzing the folkloric elements in Gogol's works. These elements are a mixture of authentic Ukrainian folklore that either existed or still exists, as well as folk motifs created by Gogol himself. As we saw in the case of Dr. Nikolenko's scientific article that helped our students, a further research is necessary to gain a deeper understanding of Gogol's, Dikanka, and Ukrainian culture as a whole. As we have seen, our classroom spent a year carefully reading Dikanka. Even though we have not finished reading it, it was a remarkable experience for us to think about Ukraine and search for information about the country. Initially, students simply answered the questions provided by the teacher, but by the end of the year, they began to discuss by themselves, asking each other questions and interpreting the text more deeply. Through reading Dikanka, we gained a lot of information about Ukraine while also realizing how little we actually knew about the country. In today's world, young people are constantly searching for information, sharing it with their friends, and using machine translation tools for practical purposes. These tools offer valuable methods and opportunities to broaden and deepen our knowledge and critical skills. Having a basic knowledge of foreign language can greatly aid in expanding our research sphere. The same holds true for the researchers, as it is now possible to cooperate across language barriers. We hope that information and research on Ukrainian language, culture, and folklore will continue to be shared and developed in different parts of the world. Дякую за увагу.